Welcome to our gathering today at First Unitarian Universalist Church of Stockton. We're glad you're here and hope you will find here what you are seeking. We are a community of individuals holding many different beliefs, coming from many different places, and each progressing on our own journeys of life and faith. We join together in our commitment to care for humanity and in our effort to shape a better, healthier, more accepting, more inclusive, and more hopeful world. We promise to accept and encourage all those persons of goodwill who gather here, recognizing that we all continue to grow and learn throughout our lifetimes. We especially welcome and stand with LGBTQ persons, even as we seek to welcome all persons of every age, ability, status, color, and ethnicity. We strive to make our community a place of peace and acceptance, love and nurture, even as we challenge ourselves and others to live more faithfully according to the values of Unitarian Universalism.
Thank you for joining our annual social justice service. I'm Jerry Bigby, chair of the First UU Church Social Justice Committee. Let me tell you a little bit about our busy committee. Our goal is to promote the visibility and involvement of the church in community activities related to social justice and shaping a better world. We're involved in a variety of issues, including climate change, literacy, homelessness, and food insecurity. We partner with a number of community groups, including the UU Social Justice Network of California, Faith in the Valley, Family Promise of San Joaquin, Eco Interfaith, the Sierra Club, the Peace and Justice Network of San Joaquin County, and the League of Women Voters. We appreciate all the support and participation of our entire church community and invite you to join us in our continued efforts to address the social justice needs of our community. We hold bi-monthly planning meetings and everyone is welcome. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sam Allen, and I'll be your worship associate for today. Our first reading comes from 579 in the Living Tradition, The Limits of Tyrants by Frederick Douglass. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are people who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its waters. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out what people will submit to, and you have found out the exact amount of justice which will be imposed upon them. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. And now for a chalice lighting. We light our chalice to enlighten our world and our lives as we seek to accept and include all persons of goodwill who wish to join our community. And now it's time to virtually greet one another. And now for our words of affirmation. Children may say the children's parts, adults may say the children's parts, and those young at heart may say either or both. We believe in love. Love is the only doctrine of this church. We believe in truth. The quest for truth is our sacrament. We believe in helping others, and service is our prayer. We believe in the sacredness of life, to dwell together in peace, seek knowledge in freedom, serve humanity in fellowship, and cherish the earth and its creatures. This do we covenant, each with the other.
Bend the arc and break the ceiling.
Bend the arc and break the ceiling.
Human rights for human beings.
Human rights for human beings.
Bend the arc and break the ceiling.
Bend the arc and break the ceiling.
Human rights for human beings.
Human rights for human beings. Bend the arc, bend the arc. Bend the arc, bend the arc.
Bend the arc and break the ceiling.
Bend the arc and break the ceiling.
Human rights for human beings.
Human rights for human beings.
Bend the arc and break the ceiling.
Bend the arc and break the ceiling.
Human rights for human beings.
Human rights for human beings. Bend the arc, bend the arc. Bend the arc, bend the arc. Bend the arc.
What's in a Name by Mahogany L. Browne. If you are denied a job because of your height or your educational background, because of your skin color or the enunciation of your name, if you are denied a place to live because of your religion or your loved ones, because of your musical taste or your choice of clothes, if you are denied the right to safe passage to walk freely without harm into the record store or a pharmacy, remember those who came before us. They did not go quietly. They sat at the lunch counter for everyone's right to service. They endured brutalities from water hoses and dog bites to ensure our humanity was respected. They set into motion the lighthouse shining a path to a brighter possibility, and it is up to us to follow the sharp beams of truth until our country celebrates with equal fervor our families' names. Rock the Boat by Elizabeth Acevedo. Someone might tell you, don't rock the boat, when they want you to hush, when they are afraid of change, when they are doing something wrong or that makes them ashamed and they don't want anyone to know. There is a feeling you might get when they say that, when you know someone has done or said something unjust, something that might hurt you or another being. That feeling might be a tightening in your chest or a tightening of your fists, and most times you should not thrust out either, but you should follow that feeling and speak up and speak out. Even if it doesn't feel easy, rock the boat. Rock the boat. Practice saying, don't do that to her, or you're hurting him, or I don't feel good when you... Speaking up might make your hands shake or your voice small or your heart flutter like a bird taking flight. That feeling, the tightening in your chest or the tightening of your fists, you may not have to thrust out either, but trust that your body is telling you to speak up and speak out. Because even if it doesn't feel easy, rock the boat. Rock the boat. And sometimes it might seem you are the only one who can see or feel that something is not quite right in how another is being treated or in how you are being treated. And you may want to be quiet so as not to rock the boat, but just know you contain waves. You are an ocean. Your heart is as large as lakes, and when it quakes, you have to rise and let the tide inside you shake every single ship that would attempt to sweep someone beneath. Rock the boat with love and hope. Rock the boat. In the Next by Mahogany L. Browne. Things should be different. We must keep our eyes on the prize. The prize is a good life. The good life smells like true freedom. True freedom is a song we should all be able to sing. It will happen in the hills of Appalachia. It will happen in the streets of Brooklyn. It will happen in the veins of Detroit. Discrimination will no longer be tolerated. Hate will have nowhere to hide. Powerful and meek, strong and brilliant, all of us combined as one. This is when the sky will break open its blue wings and we will celebrate its lush song.
At this time in our service, we share milestones in our lives and those of our family and friends. And to do that, we light candles of joy and concern. I have had a couple of requests for candles. One for Catherine Muhammad, who was a school grandmother who died this week, and she'll be missed by her school class family. And that came from Christina. And also there was a request for a candle for all those who started teaching later in life and so don't have the seniority to get immediately through the RIF process that's coming. I'd like one for our new president and vice president, for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I'd like one for those who are struggling with COVID-19 and all the issues around it, the losses of life, more than 400,000 now. I'd like one for the celebrations that we haven't been able to share, the joys of birthdays and anniversaries. We keep people in our thoughts who are celebrating and wish them well with all those things going on. I'd like one more for all those things in our thoughts and in our hearts that have gone unspoken, as I invite us into a time of silent thought, prayer, and meditation. We give thanks this day for this community, for the ways that we're able to support each other, even at a distance in times like this. We had a Zoom service last week and had a chance for some of us to get together, which was really nice. And we'll be having a couple more Zoom services in February. We also had a time where some of us gathered in the parking lot to bring things to support social justice and family promise. It was good to see people in person. We miss that time of gathering, and we look forward to a time, hopefully soon, when we'll be able to be together and share our stories, our lives, our concerns. But for now, we give thanks for this community and the good people that support each other in this place. Amen.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
And now for a second reading, number 576 in Singing the Living Tradition, A Litany of Restoration by Marjorie Bowens Wheatley. If, recognizing the interdependence of all life, we strive to build community, the strength we gather will be our salvation. If you are black and I am white, it will not matter. If you are female and I am male, it will not matter. If you are older and I am younger, it will not matter. If you are progressive and I am conservative, it will not matter. If you are straight and I am gay, it will not matter. If you are Christian and I am Jewish, it will not matter. If we join spirits as brothers and sisters, The pain of our aloneness will be lessened, and that does matter. In this spirit, we build community and move forward towards restoration.
At this time in our service, we give thanks for all those who support this congregation, and we give the opportunity for those who would like to send in donations or pledge payments to send them to our office at 2737 Pacific Avenue, Stockton, California, 95204. Thank you. Widening the UU Circle for Social Justice Sunday. He drew a circle that shut me out, heretic rebel a thing to flout, but love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle and took him in. This quote by Edwin Markham became popular with Unitarian Universalists back in the last century. It may have provided some of the impetus for the title of the 2020 report by the UUA Commission on Institutional Change, Widening the Circle of Concern. Throughout the 20th century, Unitarian Universalists did widen the circle many times to include atheists, agnostics, humanists, pagans, and other practitioners of earth-centered religions, Jews, Buddhists, and members of most major religions. As a tradition founded in Christian beliefs and values, the expansion of the circle in the late 19th and 20th centuries was really pretty amazing. The progressive development of several sets of principles helped to define our movement as value-based while remaining open to various religious beliefs and practices without creed or doctrine. Unitarians and Universalists were also welcoming and accepting of women in leadership positions and in the ministry long before most other religious traditions would even consider such. Universalist women, including Olympia Brown, were ordained as early as 1863. By the turn of the 21st century, women outnumbered men in our ministry and in our seminaries. Beginning in the latter half of the 20th century, LGBTQ persons began to be fully included in our congregations and ministry, and the UU Ministers Association was the first ministerial group to fully support and indicate willingness to officiate at same-sex marriages. Many of our current ministers identify as LGBTQ or elsewhere on the gender spectrum. Our history of welcoming, including, accepting, and honoring the voices and ministry of people of color is considerably more problematic. It isn't just that we tend to like and use too much of the music of old dead white guys, but we have often not taken seriously the needs and experiences of persons of color. Too often we have based our acceptance of persons of color in a colorblind model that assumes that they have lived much as white folks have lived, ignoring the racism and fears that they have faced throughout their lives. Too many of us white folks just don't understand well enough their life experience. Too often our movement, often unaware, has supported the white supremacy culture that dominates our national experience. When we hear that someone black has been shot and killed, we ask too quickly what they did, rather than wondering if the shooting was justified. Even during the Trump years, we all too readily accepted his white supremacy and the different responses he encouraged for white folks and persons of color. His approach to immigration was racist, not rational. Throughout our history in the United States, Unitarians and Universalists have too often remained silent on matters of race within our movement. Even though we supported the civil rights movement and welcomed persons of color who visited or came to join our congregations, we expected them to become more like us. Several times in the history of Unitarian Universalism, there have been efforts to dismantle racism and de-center the white experience within our movement. One particularly painful period came with the failure to fully fund black programs in 1970 when there was a shortfall of income. Many blacks left the movement at that time. The last major effort to dismantle racism in UUism was in the Journey Toward Wholeness program, which began in the 1990s. The current Commission on Institutional Change has tried to take an even more comprehensive look at our movement and congregations, seeking a way forward toward greater inclusiveness, acceptance, and justice. The Commission's report has looked at the history of racism against blacks and indigenous people and other persons of color throughout American history, which too often has been supported or at least accepted by our religious forebears. The Commission has raised a series of questions and recommended actions to address the long history of failings within our movement. It is not easy reading, though the report is not that long. The Commission places before us a challenge to do better in the future, as well as to make reparations for past failures. Even though many of us marched and demonstrated for civil rights, we did not often develop the kind of friendships with persons of color which might have helped us to more fully understand the deeper meanings and impacts of racial exclusion, redlining, blaming, and racial violence. We tried to fix some of the symptoms without doing enough to change the causes. The Trump years helped many of us to see how far we have yet to go as a nation, but also how much white supremacy culture remains in Unitarian Universalism. By now, several of you may be wondering who got me to drink the Kool-Aid to join this cause. What really made a difference for me was paying attention to the recent shootings of blacks by police, along with the too frequent deaths in custody, such as that of George Floyd. We are now hearing the stories of how police arrived and in mere seconds unleashed a hail of bullets at blacks, whether or not they were children and whether or not they were already cooperating. Those events almost never happen to whites, even though far more white offenders are arrested and charged for every kind of crime. That reality led me to look more closely at Unitarian Universalism and to realize that we have not done much to challenge those incidents or to question the positions of police and other authorities. We have accepted and embodied the American status quo, including that around race, so that we rarely ask ourselves why we have not become more multicultural, more inclusive, more welcoming to people of color. A few years ago, when we discussed putting up a Black Lives Matter banner, we could not answer the question what we would do to support that movement, and so we didn't get the banner. Now we are being challenged to look at how we treat persons of color who have had very different backgrounds from us. We do fine with well-educated, articulate persons of color who are like us, but what about those who are poor or who have been abused by the systems we support? The point of the Commission's report and many recent books on matters of race is that even acceptance is not enough. We must also understand the experience of blacks and indigenous people and other persons of color. No matter how good our individual actions have been or our intentions, still we continue to support the status quo, accepting the structural differences built into our society and into our Unitarian Universalist movement. The cost of being a leader in a UU congregation or in the movement is high, running into the thousands of dollars to attend our annual General Assembly or even regional assemblies. Few congregations have the money to pay the costs of delegates or even adequately subsidize registrations for GA. Most of the delegates to GA and other gatherings are retired white folks who are fairly well off, along with white ministers. The cost of attending UU seminaries and some other accepted schools for ministry is almost guaranteed to leave students in debt for years after graduation, in amounts that put such training out of reach for many blacks or indigenous people or other persons of color. Among other recommendations, the Commission's report suggests establishing alternate paths to ministry. For too long, we have predicated acceptance and full inclusion of persons of color upon their ability to be just like us, to have the education and financial resources to participate in the same ways we do. This report challenges that approach on multiple grounds and challenges us to find better, more inclusive ways to honor the individual histories of persons of color whose experience may be vastly different from many of us. The report challenges the UU movement to build new accountability structures and ensure that every part of the movement works to dismantle racism and find ways to include blacks, indigenous people, and other persons of color who have for too long been marginalized in our movement. I don't have time today to answer all the questions you may have of what we can do as a congregation, but I encourage each of you to get and read the report and join in the discussion of how we may respond. The report is available through the UUA bookstore, and I think a PDF is still available from uua.org. As we begin thinking about reopening our doors this spring, I challenge us to be more aware of how we greet persons of color who may join us. Without mobbing them, can we be welcoming while respecting who they are, even if they walk in with Bibles? Can we seek to understand their history and reality, even if it is very different from our own? Even as our society has become more aware of the racism and white supremacy very much still alive in our nation, The reports continue to come in of black men and boys shot and killed without attempts at de-escalation or left to die in custody. Our UU principles call us to recognize the inherent worth and dignity of all persons and call for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Throughout our nation's history, these values have not fully applied to persons of color. In our movement, persons of color have too often been marginalized and often poorly treated. It is time that we made greater efforts to live our principles toward all persons, both within our congregation and in society at large. Our efforts will help to build the beloved community that we seek. So may it be. Shalom, salam, blessed be, namaste, and amen. At this time in our service, I invite you to virtually join hands. May this congregation be dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences, beneath all our diversity, there's a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together, in spite of time and death and the space between the stars. We pause in silent witness to that unity. May the stars carry your sadness away. May the flowers fill your heart with beauty. May hope forever wipe away your tears. And above all, may love make you strong. Amen.